Charlotte Hayes had seen wealthy men lose their tempers before, but nothing compared to the storm brewing inside the Marlowe room tonight. The chandelier light glimmered across marble floors, catching the sharp angles of Lorenzo Vitali's expression, the most feared Mafia patriarch on the East Coast. His tailored Armani suit looked untouched by the chaos he carried with him, but his voice was cutting through the air like a blade. 21 experts, he growled, slamming a Cartier pen onto the table. 21 failures. The entire staff froze. Managers held their breath. No one dared move, not even to blink. Charlotte, clutching a tray of crystal glasses, felt her heartbeat climb painfully into her throat. Being late twice this week had almost cost her job. One more mistake and she was gone. She kept her head low, praying he wouldn't notice her. But then Lorenzo's cold eyes lifted and locked onto hers. The tray in her hands trembled. He narrowed his gaze, studying her face as if searching for something she didn't know she possessed. Dominic Hale, his senior advisor, stepped closer, his stare dripping with suspicion. "Why is the waitress standing there?" he sneered. "She shouldn't hear a single word of this." Charlotte tried to back away, but Lorenzo raised a hand commanding silence. "You," he said, pointing at her with unsettling precision. "Come here." Everyone. The restaurant seemed to exhale in fear. Charlotte felt her knees weaken as she stepped forward, unaware that this single moment would upend her entire life and expose secrets buried deeper than she ever imagined. And then Lorenzo whispered the words that made her blood run cold. "Maybe she's the one we need." Charlotte's footsteps felt too loud against the polished floor as she approached the private table. Every instinct screamed for her to turn around, to disappear back into the kitchen where waitresses belonged, not into the crossfire of powerful men with tempers sharp enough to slice steel. But Lorenzo Vitali's gaze held her in place like a command carved into stone. Dominic Hale stepped forward first, blocking her path with a stiff, arrogant smirk. He smelled faintly of expensive tobacco, the kind smoked by men who never doubted their own importance. "She's trembling," he said, with a dismissive scoff. "She'll drop something. Let her go back to clearing plates." Lorenzo didn't even glance at him. Enough. That single word made everyone stand straighter, including Charlotte, who struggled to steady her breathing. "Set the documents," Lorenzo instructed one of his guards. A stack of papers was laid out on the long mahogany table pages of encrypted diagrams, numbers, and signatures. Charlotte didn't understand any of it, yet something about the way the margins aligned looked off, as if someone had stitched together pieces that didn't belong. Dominic noticed her glance. "Keep your eyes down," he snapped. "This isn't for you." Charlotte lowered her gaze quickly. She had survived her life by knowing when not to be noticed. But tonight, fate wasn't giving her that option. Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Tell me, Miss Hayes, why do you look at these pages as if you see something the rest of us don't?" I wasn't," she whispered. "You were." Her throat tightened. Dominic rolled his eyes. "Sir, she's a waitress, not a strategist. We have already brought in 21 professionals, and 21 failed," Lorenzo cut in sharply. Silence smothered the air. Charlotte shifted nervously. She shouldn't say anything. She knew that. Her job, her safety, depended on it. But then Lorenzo spoke again, his tone colder than marble. "Come closer, Miss Hayes. Look carefully. If you notice anything useful, speak." Her heart pounded, because as she stepped closer, she suddenly did notice something small, something impossible, something no one else had, and it made her breath catch in her chest. Charlotte leaned over the table, trying to keep her hands steady. The pages were filled with dense codes, symbols, and signatures she didn't understand, but one detail pulsed beneath the surface like a warning light. A repeating pattern, a shifted margin, a signature that didn't align with the rest. She swallowed hard. Lorenzo Vitali watched her like a hawk watches a trembling mouse. Dominic Hale stood behind him, arms crossed, irritation dripping from every breath he took. "This is pointless," Dominic muttered. "She's wasting your—" Charlotte exhaled a shaky breath and whispered, almost involuntarily, "This bottom's signature." It was added later. The entire room snapped still. Lorenzo's brows lifted a fraction surprise, interest, danger, all flickering together. Dominic's smirk vanished. "What did you just say?" he demanded. Charlotte stepped back, terrified she had crossed a line she could never uncross. I'm sorry. It just looked different. The ink pressure, the spacing, someone edited that section on a different day." Dominic slammed his palm on the table. "She's lying. She has no idea what she's talking about." But Lorenzo held up a finger, silencing him instantly. He turned the page, examining the signature with a newfound tension in his jaw. "She's right." A ripple of shock moved through the room. Lorenzo looked at Charlotte again, but this time his gaze held something sharp, something calculating. "How did you see that?" "I just noticed," she said softly. "You noticed what 21 experts missed." His voice lowered, dangerous and intrigued. "Interesting." Dominic's eyes darkened. He took a step toward her, his tone venomous. "How long have you been listening? Who told you to look at this?" "No one," Charlotte whispered. "I don't know anything." She didn't realize she had backed up until her shoulder hit the wall. Lorenzo rose slowly to his feet. His shadow fell over the table. "Miss Hayes," he said, voice quiet but heavy with implication. "Someone inside my organization tampered with this document. Someone close to me." Charlotte's pulse hammered. Then Lorenzo leaned forward, eyes locked on hers. "Tell me," he murmured. "What else do you see?" Charlotte didn't want to look again. Every instinct begged her to step back, apologize, and disappear into the safety of anonymity. But Lorenzo Vitale's stare held her in place, heavy and unyielding, like he was peeling away every layer of fear she hid behind. Her voice trembled. "The spacing between the lines. It shifts only in the last section." She pointed carefully. Whoever added that signature also modified the final paragraph. Someone wanted it to look authentic. Dominic stiffened. "That's impossible. Only 4 people had access to these documents." Lorenzo's gaze flicked toward him with unsettling precision. "Exactly." A slow, suffocating silence unfurled across the room. Charlotte felt her stomach knot. She had said too much. She knew it. She had stepped into a territory that didn't belong to a waitress from the Bronx territory where mistakes didn't end with being fired. They ended much worse. Dominic moved toward her, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the floor. "You expect us to believe you noticed all this? By accident?" Charlotte backed up a step, pulse racing. "I'm not saying I'm right. You're not right," he snapped. "You're lying." But Lorenzo lifted a hand again, slow, controlled, final. Dominic froze mid-breath. "Let her speak," Lorenzo said. Charlotte felt the weight of every eye settle onto her. She swallowed. Someone tried to hide that the final encryption key was altered. The code doesn't flow. Whoever did this wasn't trying to protect you. They were trying to trap you. Gasps rippled across the table. Dominic's jaw clenched. "She's manipulating you, Lorenzo." Lorenzo didn't answer. He studied Charlotte with unnerving focus, like a man realizing the truth had been sitting quietly at his table all along. Then he leaned forward. "Miss Hayes, did you see anything else?" Charlotte hesitated. Because she had. A watermark. A trace. Something that hinted the traitor was someone incredibly close to Lorenzo. If she said it, she knew she'd never be safe again. And yet, the words slipped out before she could stop them. "Yes, I think the person who altered this was inside your inner circle." Charlotte's words hung in the air like a spark dropped into gasoline. Inside Lorenzo Vitale's private dining suite, the temperature seemed to drop. Every man in the room stiffened. Dominic Hale's eyes narrowed into blades. Inside his inner circle. One guard muttered under his breath, taking an instinctive step away from the table, almost as if betrayal were contagious. Charlotte regretted speaking the moment the sentence left her lips. She felt the weight of her apron, the worn fabric brushing against her palms, reminding her she didn't belong here. She was a waitress, working 3 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night. This world, this table, was a battlefield designed to swallow people like her whole. Dominic leaned in so close she could feel the heat of his breath. "You're making accusations that could get people killed," he hissed. "Are you sure you want to play that game?" "I'm not playing anything," she whispered. "I just noticed the pattern shift." "Well, stop noticing." Before anyone could react, Dominic snatched the documents off the table and waved for security. "Escort her out. She's interfering." 2 guards moved toward her. Charlotte's heart dropped, but Lorenzo's voice cut through the room like a razor. "Sit down." The guards froze. Dominic turned, stunned. "Lorenzo, do I look like I need your interpretation of my orders?" Lorenzo asked quietly, dangerously. Dominic swallowed hard. Charlotte sat slowly, feeling every frightened tremor in her hands. Lorenzo walked toward her, his polished shoes silent against the carpet. "You said someone close to me altered the file," he said. "Show me." Her throat tightened. "I don't think I should." "You already started," Lorenzo replied. "Finish." She leaned forward, pointing at the faint watermark she had spotted earlier. A pattern left behind by the document editing software, but only if someone forgot to disable timestamp tracking. That mistake revealed everything. "This watermark," Charlotte whispered, "matches only one device. Someone who was here tonight." Chairs scraped. Guards stiffened. Dominic didn't blink. Then Lorenzo asked the question Charlotte feared most. "Whose device?" Her voice almost failed her. "Yours. Or someone who sits very close to you." The moment Charlotte pointed out the watermark, Lorenzo Vitale lifted one hand, barely a gesture, yet every guard in the room jolted into action. Doors slammed. Heavy locks clicked. The entire dining wing of the Marlowe room went into immediate shutdown. Charlotte felt her breath hitch. She had seen Lorenzo angry before, but this was different. This was controlled. Surgical rage, the kind reserved for traitors. "No one enters. No one leaves," Lorenzo commanded. A guard switched off the restaurant's main lights, leaving only the golden glow above their table. Shadows stretched long across the marble floor, swallowing corners whole. Charlotte's skin prickled. Dominic tried to keep his voice steady. "This is unnecessary. She's a waitress. She doesn't understand what she's implying." Lorenzo turned slowly. "She identified a watermark that none of your experts caught. Perhaps you should be the one explaining." Dominic's jaw tightened. Charlotte lowered her gaze, wishing she could disappear. She had survived years of poverty, betrayal from people she trusted, an older brother imprisoned for a crime he didn't commit, but nothing in her life had prepared her for being trapped in a sealed room with dangerous men and a truth she might regret uncovering. Suddenly, a faint vibration buzzed across the table. Everyone turned. A phone left face down beside the encrypted documents, lit up with a blinking signal. Charlotte recognized it immediately. Minutes earlier, it had been dark. Now, it showed one thing: an outgoing file transfer, a timed send. Someone inside the locked dining room had scheduled the stolen document to be sent automatically. Charlotte felt her heartbeat spike. "That phone," she whispered. "It wasn't active before. Whoever owns it is the one who altered the file." Guards scanned the table. Lorenzo stared at the device, his expression unreadable. Then Dominic stepped forward too quickly, too defensively. "Don't touch that," he snapped. "It's not relevant." But it was too late. Lorenzo's gaze sharpened, ice-cold and unmistakably lethal. "Bring me the phone," he ordered. "Now." The guard lifted the phone from the table with gloved hands, holding it out for Lorenzo. The screen glowed with a pulsing red icon, countdown numbers ticking slowly beneath it, marking the time left before the document was transmitted to an unknown recipient. 30 seconds. 29. Lorenzo's expression darkened. Who owns this device? Before Charlotte could speak, before any guard could answer, a man seated near the end of the long table suddenly shoved his chair back. The legs screeched painfully across the marble. His eyes were wild, panicked caught. "Don't let him move," one guard shouted, but it was too late. The man bolted. Charlotte gasped as he sprinted past her, knocking a silver tray from her hands. Glass shattered across the floor. Panic rippled through the sealed room like electricity. Guards rushed after the fleeing man, their heavy boots pounding against the marble as they tore down the corridor. Dominic cursed loudly, pretending to be surprised, though Charlotte caught the flicker of something in his eyes. Relief? Anticipation? She wasn't sure. What she did know was this: the wrong man was running. Lorenzo saw it too. "Don't kill him," Lorenzo barked. "Bring him back breathing." The hallway echoed with the violent struggle, grunts, a crash, a sharp cry. Charlotte flinched with each sound. She felt utterly out of place, a waitress trapped in a world where mistakes were paid for in blood, not reprimands. Dominic turned on her fiercely. "This is your fault. You should have kept your mouth shut." "Boss." Charlotte backed away, her shoes crunching over shattered glass. "I didn't mean I was just trying to help." "Help," Dominic hissed. "You exposed information you had no right." Before he could finish, two guards dragged the frantic man back into the room. His suit was torn, his face dripping sweat, his breath coming in jagged bursts. He pointed at Charlotte with a shaking hand. "She did it. She told me to run. She's been listening to everything she knows too much." Charlotte's heart stopped. Lorenzo looked at her slowly, dangerously. "Miss Hayes," he said, "why is this man claiming you're involved?" Charlotte felt the accusation hit her like a physical blow. The man's trembling finger stayed locked on her, desperation twisting his features. "She told me to run. She warned me you'd kill me if I stayed." Lorenzo Vitale didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Silence gathered around him like armor. "Miss Hayes," he said slowly, "I suggest you answer." Charlotte's throat tightened as every guard, every worker, every shadow in the room turned toward her. I didn't tell him anything," she managed. "I've never even spoken to him before tonight." Dominic stepped forward, seizing the moment like a predator catching scent of blood. Convenient. The moment her little theory gets someone caught, he turns around and accuses her. Why would he lie? "Because he's scared," Charlotte whispered. He panicked. "Or," Dominic countered, "because she is the leak." A chill raced down Charlotte's spine. She shook her head vigorously. No, I swear." Lorenzo raised a hand, and the room stilled. He approached her slowly, each step deliberate. "You noticed patterns no expert saw. You pointed out inner circle tampering, and now a man caught mid-crime names you before losing consciousness from panic." His eyes narrowed. "Either you have remarkable intuition, or you're involved." Charlotte felt her knees weaken. "I'm not involved in anything. I was just doing my job." Dominic huffed a dark laugh. Your job is to pour water, not unravel encrypted documents." The guards tightened around her, forming a wall of suspicion. Lorenzo studied her face with unnerving precision, as if dissecting every micro-expression. "Fear," he murmured. "But is it fear of me, or fear of being exposed?" "I'm afraid," Charlotte whispered, "because I'm standing in a locked room with men who think I'm part of something I don't understand. A flicker of something, respect, doubt, passed through Lorenzo's eyes. But before he could speak, one of the guards shouted, "Sir, the file transfer isn't stopping, it's accelerating." Lorenzo whipped toward him. Dominic's expression twitched, barely visible, but Charlotte saw it, And for the first time, she wondered if the real danger wasn't the man pointing at her, but the man standing quietly beside Lorenzo. The guard's alarmed shout ricocheted through the room, jarring everyone into motion. Lorenzo rushed toward the glowing phone, the red icon now flashing faster, the countdown evaporating digit by digit. Someone had overridden the automatic block, meaning the traitor had prepared a second failsafe. "Stop it," Lorenzo barked. "I'm trying," the guard said, fingers flying uselessly across the screen. "It's locked behind a biometric seal." Dominic folded his arms, voice cool. "We're wasting time accusing the wrong people." Charlotte felt the weight of his words like a tightening noose. Then her eyes drifted to the screen, something about the outgoing file name. Something subtle, a tiny embedded signature she'd seen once before. A memory flickered. Her father, sitting at a small kitchen table, tapping his pencil against a page, smiling softly. "This is my redundancy marker," he had told her. "Only I use it." Charlotte's stomach dropped. That signature. That tiny, embedded pattern. It was her father's. Her breath caught. "Lorenzo, that marker inside the file name, it's custom. Whoever built this encryption studied under someone with an extremely specific method." Dominic scoffed. "And how would you know that?" Charlotte ignored him. She pointed to the pattern. "My father used that exact sequence when he taught encryption at the university. He said it was his way of knowing if someone copied his work." Lorenzo froze. "Your father, Hayes?" Charlotte nodded slowly, fear tightening her chest. "Yes." A dangerous silence followed, a silence thick with memories Lorenzo clearly didn't want resurfacing. Dominic's mask tightened. "This is absurd. Her father died years ago." Charlotte took a shaky step back. "How do you know that?" Dominic didn't answer. Lorenzo turned sharply, eyes blazing. "Dominic! You told me her father disappeared during an academic scandal. Not that he died." Dominic stalled. "It was implied." "No," Charlotte whispered. "Someone wanted it to look that way." The countdown hit its final seconds. 3. Charlotte whispered the words before she even realized she had spoken. "My father didn't vanish. Someone erased him." The countdown hit 0, but instead of sending, the phone froze, then went black. A forced shutdown. Someone intervened at the last possible second. The room exhaled in disbelief, but Lorenzo didn't move. His gaze remained locked on Charlotte, as if something ancient and unwelcome had clawed its way back into his memory. "Hayes," he repeated quietly. "Your father's name was Adrian Hayes." Charlotte nodded, pulse thundering in her ears. "Yes. He disappeared when I was 12. No one ever found out what happened." "Hate." Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "I knew him." Dominic spun toward him. "Lorenzo." "Shut up," Lorenzo snapped, making Dominic flinch for the first time that night. Charlotte blinked in shock. "You knew my father." Lorenzo stepped closer, his expression shifting into something heavy, something almost haunted. "He consulted on a confidential project for me years ago. Brilliant mind. Too brilliant. He discovered something inside my organization. Something someone didn't want found. And..." Dominic's fists tightened behind him. Charlotte felt her knees weaken. What did he discover? Lorenzo didn't answer immediately. He turned to the darkened phone on the table, the failed transmission blinking faintly like a dying heartbeat. "He uncovered that my encrypted systems were being altered from within," Lorenzo said finally. "He warned me I was surrounded by a traitor I trusted." Charlotte's breath trembled. "A traitor like Dominic." Dominic laughed, but it rang hollow. "This is insane. She's manipulating you with a coincidence and a childhood story." But Lorenzo wasn't listening. "I never saw your father again after he delivered that warning," Lorenzo continued. "He vanished the next day. No trace, no goodbye, nothing." Charlotte's eyes burned. She imagined her father alone, frightened, carrying secrets too big for a single man to survive. "You think the same person who erased him is the one altering your files now?" she whispered. Lorenzo didn't blink. I no longer think it. I know it. Dominic stepped back, just slightly, but Charlotte saw it. A tell. A flinch. Lorenzo's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Miss Hayes, the man who betrayed your father is standing in this room. Charlotte felt the air drain from the room, as if Lorenzo's words had sucked all oxygen away. Someone in this room, someone breathing the same air, had destroyed her father's life. Her hands trembled uncontrollably. Dominic stepped forward with a cool expression, trying to regain control. This is ridiculous. You can't rely on the memories of a waitress whose father, if he even existed, vanished 20 years ago. Charlotte flinched at the cruelty, but Lorenzo didn't look away from Dominic. Only 5 people had access to those systems back then, he said. Myself, 2 security chiefs, Adrian Hayes, and you. Dominic forced a laugh that didn't reach his eyes. So now I'm the villain because a waitress says so. It's not what she says, Lorenzo replied. It's how you react. Charlotte saw it too. Every time her father was mentioned, Dominic's posture shifted subtly, but unmistakably. His jaw tensed. His eyes flicked to escape routes. A predator ready to bolt. Charlotte took a breath she didn't realize she was holding. You knew him, she whispered. You knew my father. Dominic didn't answer. Lorenzo stepped closer. When Adrian Hayes disappeared, you told me he fled the country. You showed me falsified travel documents. You insisted he was unreliable. His voice dropped. You were the one who convinced me not to search for him. Dominic's mask cracked just slightly, but Charlotte saw it. There it was, the truth he had buried under years of calculated lies. You were protecting yourself, Charlotte whispered. You framed him, Dominic snapped. I did no such thing, but the outburst came too fast, too sharp, too rehearsed. Lorenzo's eyes hardened. The man who warned me about a traitor died the next day. The only person who gained from his silence was you. Charlotte's heart pounded so violently she thought she might faint. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He had been silenced, erased, and Dominic Hale, the polished, respected advisor, had been the architect of that destruction. Dominic's breathing quickened as guards subtly shifted, closing in. Lorenzo's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. Dominic, it's time you tell us what really happened. Dominic didn't answer Lorenzo's demand. Instead, he slowly lifted his chin, composure returning like a mask snapping back into place. His voice was unnervingly calm. You want a confession, Dominic said. You won't get one. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. You don't have a choice. But Dominic smiled, cold, deliberate, terrifying. There's always a choice. Dull. Before anyone could react, Dominic grabbed the nearest guard, yanked the man's gun from its holster, and shoved him aside. Gasps tore through the room. Charlotte froze, her breath caught in her throat. Back away, Dominic barked, aiming the weapon at Lorenzo. Guards moved on instinct, but Dominic fired a warning shot into the ceiling. Crystal shards rained down from the chandelier, glittering like falling stars. No one takes a step, Dominic warned. I walk out of here alive, or everyone pays. Charlotte's pulse thundered. She could barely think, barely breathe. The man who had destroyed her father's life was now threatening to end hers. Dominic's gaze snapped toward her. His eyes were sharp with recognition and hatred. You, he spat. Little waitress. You should have stayed invisible. Charlotte backed away until her spine hit the wall. I didn't do anything. You did everything, Dominic roared. If you didn't open your mouth, none of this would be happening. He took a step toward her, gun still raised. Lorenzo growled. Touch her, and you won't leave this room breathing. Dominic laughed darkly. Oh, I'm leaving, and she's coming with me. Charlotte's stomach dropped. What? You're valuable now, Dominic hissed. Insurance. Your father was the same, too smart for his own good. The words sliced through her like a blade. Guards began to circle Dominic again, slow and deliberate, waiting for an opening. but Dominic pressed the gun under Charlotte's chin. "Try it," he warned. "And she dies before I reach the door." Charlotte's breath trembled, tears burning her eyes. She couldn't scream, couldn't fight, not with cold metal against her throat. Then Dominic leaned close enough that she felt his breath. "Your father begged too." Charlotte could barely breathe. Every nerve in her body froze beneath the cold press of the gun under her chin. Dominic's grip was trembling now, not from fear, but from a feverish determination. He had nothing left to lose, and that made him deadly. The guards inched closer, slow and calculated. Lorenzo's jaw clenched, muscles tightening with each step Dominic took toward the exit, dragging Charlotte with him. The night had spiraled far beyond encrypted documents and whispered suspicions. This was survival now. Suddenly, the steel door at the end of the hall slammed open. A man stood there breathless, coat soaked from the pouring Manhattan rain. Ethan Ward. His eyes widened when he saw the gun pressed against Charlotte's throat. "Let her go," Ethan said, voice raw with urgency. Dominic laughed sharply. "The tech prince arrives. How sweet. You think you can negotiate with me?" Ethan stepped forward anyway. "Dominic, listen to me." "Another step," Dominic barked, "and I end her life." "Oh, 8. Charlotte's chest tightened. She could see Ethan's hands shaking, see him calculating every possible move, every risk. He wasn't armed. He wasn't trained for this world of violence and betrayal, but he came anyway. Lorenzo growled, "Ward, stay back." But Ethan didn't look at Lorenzo. His focus stayed on Charlotte, eyes filled with something she didn't understand, fear for her. Not for the situation, for her. "Dominic," Ethan tried again, voice steadying. "You won't make it out of the building with a hostage. You know that." Dominic sneered. "I don't need to make it far, just far enough to send a message." "And what message is that?" Ethan demanded. "That no one crosses me," Dominic spat. "Not her father, not her, not you." Ethan's expression hardened, something cold and unfamiliar, replacing the gentle softness she'd seen in him before. "You're wrong," Ethan said quietly. "Someone is crossing you right now." Dominic's eyes flicked in confusion, and that split second was enough. A guard lunged. Dominic jerked the gun. Charlotte screamed. The weapon flew from Dominic's hand, skidding across the marble floor. And suddenly Dominic was pinned, roaring beneath 3 men. Lorenzo exhaled, deadly and calm, but Charlotte couldn't hear anything. She was shaking, staring at Ethan, who was still standing exactly where he'd stepped in, breath unsteady, eyes locked on her like he'd almost lost something he couldn't bear to lose. Charlotte's legs nearly gave out beneath her, but Ethan was at her side in an instant, steadying her without saying a word. His touch was gentle, so gentle it almost broke her. In the chaos of shouting guards and Dominic being dragged away in handcuffs, Ethan whispered, "You're safe now, I promise." "Ver stains." Oath. But Charlotte wasn't listening. Her eyes were fixed on the phone lying on the marble floor. The encrypted file still flickered faintly on the cracked screen, frozen mid-transfer, a corrupted window, a partially exposed code, a pattern she recognized, one she hadn't seen since childhood. She stepped away from Ethan, from Lorenzo, from everything. She knelt beside the phone, her heartbeat wild and uneven. Lorenzo approached slowly. "Miss Hayes, leave that. The danger has passed." "Ah, no," Charlotte whispered. "It hasn't." She pressed her fingertips to the edge of the phone, just enough to tilt the screen toward her. The disrupted code revealed a sequence broken, incomplete, but familiar, a rhythm, a cadence. Her father used to hum it while writing. She whispered, half to herself, "This isn't a standard encryption key. It's a memory pattern." Lorenzo frowned. "Explain." Charlotte swallowed hard. "My father, he used emotional triggers as secondary locks. Only someone who understood the origin could complete the sequence." Ethan crouched beside her. "You mean only you? Or someone who knew him well, she said softly. But Dominic never could have solved this. He stole the file, yes, but he couldn't open it. Lorenzo moved closer, urgency sharpening his voice. Miss Hayes, can you finish it? Charlotte hesitated, because if she did, she might uncover the final piece of what her father died protecting, or she might reveal something even more dangerous, something Lorenzo himself wasn't prepared to face. The room fell silent. Charlotte closed her eyes, breathing through the panic, clawing at her chest. Then she lifted the phone and traced the broken sequence with her fingertip. She recognized her father's code instantly. It wasn't just numbers. It was a message, a goodbye. Her voice trembled as she whispered the final key aloud. Dad, I remember. And the file, unlocked. The screen lit up with a soft glow, and for a moment, the entire room fell still. Even the guards holding Dominic froze, their grips tightening as the decrypted file unfolded like a blooming flower, slow, deliberate, devastating. Charlotte stared at the lines of text appearing on the phone. Her breath caught in her throat as her father's voice, recorded years ago, crackled through the speaker. Charlotte, if you're hearing this, something has gone very wrong. Her knees buckled. Ethan caught her before she collapsed. Lorenzo remained motionless, arms stiff at his sides, eyes fixed on the screen. The room's golden light flickered across his face, revealing something she had never expected to see, their fear. Her father's voice continued. I uncovered a breach inside Lorenzo's circle. Someone altered his systems from within. Someone he trusts. If they remain in power, many will die. Charlotte's hand flew to her mouth. Dominic twisted violently in the guard's hold. Turn that off. Turn it off. But Lorenzo didn't even look at him. The next part of the recording was quieter, personal. Charlotte, my star. I'm so sorry. I wanted to come home. I tried. But if I disappear, it means I chose to protect you instead. Her heart shattered. Ethan squeezed her hand, grounding her, anchoring her, as her father's final words echoed. Don't trust the ones who pretend to protect. The traitor will hide behind loyalty. Remember that. The recording ended. Silence, heavy enough to crush bone. Charlotte's tears blurred the room into colors: gold, black, red, pain. She felt her father reaching across time, across fear, across death, to warn her, to save her. Lorenzo turned slowly toward Dominic, whose mask had fully cracked, rage twisting his features into something monstrous. You silenced him, Lorenzo said quietly. You erased a man who tried to save us both. Dominic spat. He was going to expose me. He left me no choice. 9. Lorenzo's voice deepened into a tone that made the guards straighten. Tonight, you will answer for what you did to him. Charlotte lifted her head, tears burning her eyes. For the first time, she felt her father's justice begin to awaken. Charlotte felt the room tilt, as if the truth had knocked the world off its axis. Her father's voice still echoed in her mind, soft but trembling with urgency. She had imagined him gone, imagined he abandoned her, imagined he stopped fighting. But hearing him now, he hadn't stopped. He had died trying to protect her, trying to protect them all. Ethan steadied her again, his hand warm against her arm. Charlotte. Breathe. She tried. The air felt sharp, thick, almost metallic. Across the room, Dominic struggled against the guards, veins standing out like ropes along his neck. You think this changes anything? He snarled. Your empire is still built on lies, Lorenzo. You just didn't know which lies were yours. And Lorenzo approached him slowly, each step echoing the storm churning behind his eyes. I trusted you with everything. I trusted you more than my own blood. Dominic's laugh was jagged. That was your first mistake. The guards shoved him back to the floor. Lorenzo turned away abruptly, unable to look at the man who'd betrayed him for years. Instead, he faced Charlotte, his expression stripped of power, pride, and menace. For the first time, he looked human. "Miss Hayes," he said quietly, "I owe your father a debt I can never repay." Charlotte shook her head, wiping her tears. "You don't owe him. He tried to help you, and I failed him," Lorenzo replied. "But I won't fail you." Something shifted in the room then. Guards softened their stance. Ethan stood taller, and Charlotte fragile. Trembling, Charlotte felt a spark of strength return to her chest. But the danger wasn't gone. A guard rushed toward Lorenzo, face pale. "Sir, the corrupted file wasn't the only one Dominic tampered with. There are more triggers, more traps. If we don't find them, everything your father warned about could still happen." Charlotte's blood ran cold. Ethan stepped closer protectively. "Lorenzo, what does that mean?" Lorenzo looked at Charlotte, voice grim. "It means Adrian Hayes died for a secret that's still alive." Charlotte stood frozen as Lorenzo's words settled into the air like falling ash. Her father had died protecting a secret still capable of destroying lives. The idea hollowed her out. Ethan moved closer, standing between her and the guards as if shielding her from the world. "Lorenzo, you said you owe her father. Then protect her now. She's already been dragged too deep into something she didn't choose." Lorenzo nodded slowly, the weight of guilt carved into his expression. "She will be protected. Whatever happens next, she is not to be touched." "Compatit," Dominic let out a bitter laugh from the floor. "You think you can protect her from what's coming? You couldn't protect her father. You can't even protect yourself." Lorenzo stepped forward, his shadow falling over Dominic like a verdict. "The difference is, I now know who my enemy is." Dominic's smile twisted. "I'm not the only one. You think I worked alone?" A ripple of unease moved across the guards. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. "You won't manipulate me anymore," he signaled to his men. "Get him out of my sight. Secure him. No communication. No visitors." As Dominic was hauled to his feet, he twisted his head toward Charlotte, his glare sharp enough to cut. "Your father thought he could expose us. He thought truth mattered." His smile widened cruelly. "Look where that got him." Charlotte stepped back as if slapped. Ethan reached for her hand instinctively, but Lorenzo turned on Dominic with a fury that shook the room. "You speak of him again," Lorenzo growled, "and I'll end you before the law ever gets the chance." Dominic's smirk faltered. Guards dragged him away, chains clinking, his protests fading into the hallway. The door slammed shut. Silence. Then Lorenzo faced Charlotte fully. "Your father died trying to save my organization, and me. That debt will be honored. I will protect you. Your brother, too. His wrongful conviction, consider it undone." Charlotte's breath caught. "You can clear his name." "I will," Lorenzo vowed. "Adrian Hayes saved my life. Now I will save what remains of his." For the first time, hope flickered through Charlotte's grief, but it didn't last long. A guard rushed in, pale and breathless. "Sir," a second activation just triggered, a bigger one. Someone else was working with Dominic. Charlotte's heart dropped. The traitor wasn't acting alone. The guard's words hit like a gunshot. Charlotte felt the floor shift beneath her feet. Another activation. Another traitor. Another threat hiding in the shadows of a world she never wanted to enter. Lorenzo's expression hardened instantly. "Where?" "The East Wing's servers," the guard replied. "Someone triggered a mass data extraction. It's already moving faster than Dominic's attempt." Dominic, from down the hall, laughed like a man who had nothing left to lose. "You see, you thought this was about me. I was never the only one." "Tadea," Lorenzo stormed toward him, fury radiating off him. "Who else is involved?" Dominic only smiled. "You'll find out when everything collapses, just like Adrian did." Charlotte trembled, but she didn't look away. For the first time, she saw true evil not in a movie sense, but in the quiet satisfaction of a man who destroyed lives simply because he could. Ethan stepped protectively beside her. Lorenzo, we need to move. If that extraction completes, it won't. Lorenzo pointed at 2 guards. Lock down the entire floor. Seal the elevators. No one leaves this building. Charlotte's mind raced. Someone else had access to her father's work. Someone inside Lorenzo's trusted circle. Someone who had been watching, waiting, letting Dominic take the fall first. Then it clicked. Her breath hitched as she whispered, "It's not just about stealing your data. It's about erasing you the same way they erased my father." Ethan stared at her. "Charlotte, what are you thinking?" She pointed to the pattern on the frozen phone screen. "There's a second signature in the code, a different one. Dominic didn't write it. Someone refined his work. Someone smarter. Someone higher." Lorenzo stiffened. "Who?" Charlotte's voice trembled, but she forced the words out. "Someone with access to the server wing. Someone who knew my father's encryption better than Dominic ever could." The guard's radio crackled suddenly. "Sir, there's movement in the east wing. Someone just breached the secured hallway." Charlotte's heart stopped. She whispered the realization aloud. The real traitor is still inside, and they're finishing what Dominic started. The east wing alarms wailed through the building, sharp and metallic, echoing off the marble walls like cries from a past that refused to stay buried. Guards raced down the corridor, weapons drawn, but Lorenzo stayed behind with Charlotte and Ethan, his gaze fixed, determined, stripped of hesitation. "Your father died trying to protect the truth," Lorenzo said, voice low. "Tonight, we finish what he started." Charlotte swallowed hard, the ache in her chest both painful and empowering. For years, she had carried guilt, believing her father abandoned her family. Now she knew the truth: he had died a hero, and she would not let Dominic's accomplice erase him again. A guard returned, breathless. "Sir, we've sealed the server wing. Whoever was inside escaped through the emergency shaft." Lorenzo clenched his fists. "Cowards always run." But Charlotte shook her head. "They didn't run. They're hiding. My father's code isn't designed for speed, it's designed for misdirection." Ethan blinked. "Meaning what?" "If they escaped," she said softly, "they would have triggered a silent extraction, not an alarm. They're still here, somewhere close, someone you trust enough to overlook." Lorenzo's eyes flickered with realization and dread. Before he could speak, another guard rushed in, carrying a sealed black folder. "Sir, we found this in Dominic's jacket." Lorenzo snatched it open. Inside were documents real, unaltered documents proving Charlotte's brother had been framed by the same network her father tried to expose. Charlotte gasped, tears rising. "My brother, he really was innocent." Lorenzo nodded firmly. "And he will walk free. I'll make sure of it." Charlotte covered her mouth, overwhelmed. Ethan placed a steady hand on her back, but the moment of relief ended when the guard cleared his throat. "There's more, sir." Inside the folder was a list of names. At the top, bold, unmistakable, was someone still working under Lorenzo's command. Someone who had been in the room all night. Charlotte whispered, "The second traitor is one of your own." "Writer." Lorenzo's jaw tightened, and for the first time, Charlotte saw fear not for his empire, but for the betrayal that cut deeper than all the rest. Lorenzo stared at the list of names, the final fragments of betrayal her father had died to uncover. At the top, bold and unmistakable, was a name that made the room fall silent. Salvatore Rienza, his second in command. A man Lorenzo had treated like family. Charlotte watched the truth settle into Lorenzo's expression, the devastation carving lines deeper than age ever could. Betrayal from an enemy was expected, betrayal from a brother that cut straight to the bone. Guards stormed the hallway, and within minutes they dragged Salvatore into the room, struggling, cursing Lorenzo as if he were the one who had broken their bond. "You chose a waitress over your own men," Salvatore spat. "You deserve to fall." Lorenzo stepped forward, his voice low and lethal. "Adrian Hayes tried to save us. You killed him. You framed his son, and you would have destroyed everything I built, Salvatore sneered. You were too blind to see what needed to be done. Hopes? No, Lorenzo replied. I was too loyal. His signal was silent, but the guards understood. Salvatore was taken away this time with no chance to escape, no chance to return, no chance to rewrite history. Justice for her father had finally begun. Charlotte felt something loosen inside her, a weight she had carried since childhood lifting just enough for her to breathe without pain. Ethan touched her shoulder gently. You did this, he whispered. You gave your father back his name. Can see. Tears filled her eyes. I just wanted the truth, and you got it, Lorenzo said, turning to her with a softened expression she never thought he could wear. Your father was a hero, and your brother will walk free by morning. That, I promise. Charlotte's breath trembled. Hope, real hope, filled her chest for the first time in years. Ethan stepped in front of her, voice warm. And after all this, if you want a new beginning, Charlotte, I'd like to be a part of it. I have to. She stared at him, kind eyes, steady hands, the man who ran into danger for her. Her heart answered, before her voice did. Maybe love wasn't something she had lost. Maybe it was something waiting for her all along. Lorenzo nodded approvingly, almost fatherly. Charlotte Hayes, he said, your story doesn't end in fear, it ends in freedom. And as the lights of Manhattan glowed through the windows, Charlotte finally let herself believe she had survived the darkness. And now, she was stepping into her own dawn. So that's it. Our story closes here, and if you are still sitting with me at this very moment, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a way maybe you weren't expecting. Maybe it reminded you of someone you lost, something you survived, or a part of yourself you're still fighting to protect. Charlotte's story isn't just about danger, betrayal, or justice. It's about resilience, the quiet kind we all carry. The Stoics used to say, the obstacle is the way. And tonight, we saw what that truly means. Even in darkness, even when the world feels unfair, there is always a path forward. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Charlotte didn't choose her pain, but she chose her courage. That's what changed everything. So, my wonderful friends, if this story made you feel something, even just a little, give this video a like, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so we can walk through many more stories together. Because healing happens one moment at a time, and tonight, maybe you and I found one of those moments.